smoke rises once again. The 2026 St. Louis City SC season now underway. City opens the season on Saturday with a 1-1 draw against Charlotte FC. We'll dive into that. Plus, the newest signing, Sergio Cordova. We'll talk about a number of other signings City too, and look ahead to this Sunday's game out in San Diego. We have a lot in store for you tonight on this edition of Red Smoke Rising. A couple new faces. We'll introduce those in just a second. First, I'm Jeremy Clements. You all know me. I'm here every week. And we're tapping into the St. Louis soccer content creator world as both Chris Gebhardt of STL Soccer News and special guest host, the always swole Erik Cole of Southland Supporters has joined us tonight. Chris, Erik, thank you both. How are you both doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. And now I'm gonna, after this show, go look at myself in the mirror for a little while since you boosted the confidence going into it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm good. Sorry to anyone who was expecting Tom and Jake. We will do our best tonight to fill in for those guys. I know Jake was had some stuff going on, and Tom is at a concert. So Erik and I are here to ride shotgun with you, Jeremy. So anything we can do to help the show, we're always happy to do. So.
Hey, looking forward to having you both along for the ride. Blessed in St. Louis to have a lot of fantastic content creators and folks who spread the content created. So really glad to have you to both on tonight. Again, a reminder to all those who may be watching on YouTube, we're also available on all podcast platforms, streaming live again on Tuesdays here on YouTube on the Red Smoke Rising X and the STL Soccer News YouTube. And we are proudly presented by the Pat Connolly Tavern.
Hi, it's the disembodied voice of your friendly neighborhood soccer zombie, Tom Franklin. I'm not here to participate in Red Smoke Rising tonight, but I am here in spirit to let you know about Pat Connolly Tavern, located at the corner of Oakland and Tam in beautiful Dogtown, a St. Louis institution since 1942, and a supporter of St. Louis soccer, including this very show. Our live show went great on February 10th, and it's also going to be the home for my away watch parties, as I'll be hanging out during most St. Louis City away games this season. Or if you just happen to be in the neighborhood or hanging out at Forest Park or the zoo, it is conveniently located right across the Tam Bridge. Please visit our friends at Pat Connolly Tavern, located at the corner of Oakland and Tam in beautiful Dogtown, and tell them Red Smoke Rising sent you.
Thanks, disembodied voice of Tom. We'll see you next week, and we'll catch up with you shortly or at some point, I'm sure. But we'll jump right into the news of the day, guys. The smoke rising last night in the app and clearing way today for what was likely the expected announcement of Sergio Cordova joining St. Louis City. That is a confirmed loan deal now, confirmed to be here through June of 2026. I think, guys, first and foremost, the thing that probably surprised most people is that he's going to have a designated player designation. We've seen other reports from Cesar Luis Mario that says he's got a $2.5 million purchase option as part of this deal. Comes to City after a previous stints in Vancouver and Real Salt Lake, where he had 17 goals in 59 appearances for MLS clubs in all comps. And he's also played abroad. But guys, what do you make of this signing? Chris, we'll start with you.
It's a roll of the dice. It's very akin to the Zonde Silva signing of last year, in which you're trying to take a flyer on a guy who has previous MLS experience in a position you're very thin at currently. I'd have to say that the overwhelming feedback from around the league was good luck with that. He's a guy who is obviously physically talented, but has just never put it together for any kind of stretch of time. But when you're talking about not depleted, but just a very thin striker core and forward group that we have, in a winter window in which Corey Ray himself has basically said, hey, there's not much that we're going to be able to do until the summer. Why not do something, and bring a guy in and hopefully he's at least a good locker room guy, unlike the situation that we had with Silva. But to me, it's not a big signing. Obviously, it's a roll of the dice. If you get something out of him, great. If not, you can bid farewell once the loan's over in the summer. So.
And Erik, I'm not sure what your take is. I'm curious. Do you see him as a guy that's going to challenge Simon Betcher for minutes?
No, I see this more as a depth piece. From what I've read and everything I've seen as well, I think Chris nailed it on the head with the comparison to Zonde Silva. I think it's a roll of the dice. I think it's more in the past we've had a lot of like worry with depth and worry if this guy goes down, who can we then push forward, and then who can be behind that guy as far as a late game sub, to where we're not just relying on like midfielders trying to really press into the attacking role as much. So to me, it's more of a, hey, if it works out, great. You never know with the MLS as far as players who have had previous MLS experience. Sometimes they could just fit into the right system and it looks like a great shock, or great success. We've seen that with a couple of former City players as well. Whereas vice versa, we've also seen it where we've let guys go and it's just like, yeah, they just weren't up to the stuff as far as the MLS is concerned. So to me, this is more of just, I don't think he's going to be pushing Betcher or even really, you could say Toichert or McSorley for minutes. I think it's just more depth piece just in case.
I think that's what a lot of people are saying as well. I mean, he's a guy that doesn't have a consistently proven track record of scoring. He had, one solid season in the MLS, and then a lot of folks, I think it was with your All Salt Lake, make the joke that if you're going to, every time you miss the net by a mile, it's like you're having a Cordova. So not what you really want to hear about your newest signing. I guess the question is to both of you, would you rather have done this move or done nothing else?
I would probably say this move, just the fact that it is so short loaned as far as that. I believe it's 3 months. I think if they would have went in and tried to gamble with a bigger type contract, I think that would have been more of a worry. And just like you said, the DP spot more for logistics sakes and salary type stuff, to where if it was a long-term commitment, that's when I'd be like, whoa, we're wasting a DP spot on this guy here since it's just bookkeeping sense. I think you can't ever have too much depth, and we don't. While it's not a knock towards any of the City 2 guys, that one a couple years ago, we really heavily relied on that City 2 to carry the MLS season. Why not bring somebody who's had this sort of experience and just have them as a just in case type player?
Yeah, I agree. We're not locked into him for any kind of term. It's a 6 month loan. It's not a year or 2 years or whatever. I think the important thing to remember, like Erik just said, is you do need that depth. If you look at and we'll pull up the depth chart right now and look at it, and if you look at that striker core, even with Cordova, but pre Cordova, Betcher goes down with an injury, you're starting Brendan McSorley, and that's, and with Caden Glover or subbing in somebody else to attempt to take over that 9 spot. So this at least gives you a guy who has proven MLS experience, knows how to play the position, may not light the world on fire, but if they need to, have him play minutes, he's at least capable of giving you those minutes. Whether he's going to produce or not is the big question mark. But I think if you ask Corey Ray, like, what exactly is the expectation for Cordova, I would be shocked if it was, oh yeah, he's going to come in and take over the 9 and be a long term guy. No, I think this is what Erik said. It's a depth move. It's an insurance policy in case of injury or some other unforeseen circumstance, and that's how we have to treat it. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Chris, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. There's been conversation in some circles that we made him a DP now to potentially say, let's sign him, exercise the purchase option at a lower price where he's a TAM player in the summer, leaving roster flexibility open for Corey Ray. Do either of you guys see that as a feasible scenario for City where you could make him a, let's say, TAM player in the summer and leave that option to then go big with another DP attacker after the fact?
I don't see it unless he comes in and just blows everybody's expectations out of the water. Why would you have Betcher and Cordova and then go out and get a star or a high price DP at the 9? Like, it, unless you are suddenly considering an unforeseen shift to a two striker system, which I don't see. And I, with the way that this roster is constructed, I don't foresee that. And so why would you want to make Betcher or Cordova your third string guy who's now all of a sudden, struggling for minutes? So I don't think that's possible. Again, unless the guy comes in and just, blows the roof off the place and plays out of his mind. Again, I just I can't foresee that happening.
Yeah, I think kind of like we were saying, it's just like I think unless he comes in and absolutely lights the world on fire, he just shows that he is a perfect model for this system, as well as something that's very undervalued is the way he can gel with the core that we currently have. Like it could be a guy who just really is just a good personality person that is, when he does come on, the team just really rallies behind. The way I look at this is, I don't know if Jay Clem, you're a Man U guy and you kind of remember this. Do you remember it was a Gallo a couple years ago?
Yeah.
The African, he was brought in and it was sort of similar. It was almost like a panic striker buy that they related it to was a panic striker buy. But and nobody really had any high expectations on him, but it was something that we needed for a depth piece. And in that year, we had a couple of strikers go down, and he got a lot more minutes than was expecting. He didn't light the world on fire by anything, but he did contribute a few goals here or there, and he was revered as, hey, he came in and did his job what we needed, and then we just kind of moved on from there. And I see this as sort of a similar deal, is we just need a little bit of depth in this part while we maybe scout and not make a panic buy here. I think that's very important is we don't want to go into a panic buy of buying somebody big that we're just like, hey, they're a name. They may not fit the system, but we just got to get somebody and then you're locked into a bigger contract. It seems like they could get them on a little cheaper, short term, and just like you said, if it works out, it works out. But if not, hands are clean and we move on from there.
See, and personally, I thought this was going to be nothing more than a stopgap. I think the thing that struck me from this whole thing is he's a designated player. And that locks City firmly into the 3DP 3 under 22 model, which means they will not be able to get an additional $1 million in GAM like they did last year during the first half of the season. So for those who don't know, the MLS has two different roster models. You have the 3DP 3U22, which we are now locked into. And then there's the 2DP 4 under 22. And with that, each half season you commit, you get $1 million of extra GAM. I fully expected us to go into the season in the 2-4 model and then use that extra GAM to go bigger in the summer. Any surprise? I mean, do you guys see that same thing, or am I off base in thinking that we've missed the ball by doing this move now?
Well, I mean, I tried to understand it, and read our friend Michael from Chat City Tactics breakdown of it. My head still hurts. It's so complicated, and the variables of it are so in the weeds, and it's such an MLS thing. But I'm with Billy, Hellbender, in that, yes, we have stockpiled GAM. And one of the things that you could say, Jeremy, is, oh, yeah, why don't we just even add more and have more GAM to spend? But my point would be, like, at a certain level, are you getting a player that's going to take up that much GAM to come here to St. Louis anyways? Right. You may not. And so, and again, yes, you always want to have it. You want to have it available. You want to use it. You don't want to just sit on it. But I don't know necessarily if City, just like many small market Midwestern teams, are probably not drawing and attracting the type of guys who are going to LA and Miami. And, we've talked about that before, the big, huge markets on the coast. And so I think, again, the team is essentially in a let's do what we can do for now kind of pattern in this winter window. But I think the fan base deserves and expects that they're going to, make some big swings in the summertime. They have to. And hopefully the team can tread water until then, and be in a competitive position to where whoever they will hopefully bring in, is going to make that difference and not be somebody where they're too far out of it. And regardless of who they bring in, it doesn't matter. So, I fully anticipate and expect, and, I don't want to say the word demand, but, as a season ticket holder, kind of demand that, hey, this summer needs to be a kind of swing for the fences move. So.
Yeah, and I don't think you're wrong when you say Jay Clam. You don't know if it was supposed to be this system or that system because I'm really curious to know. Does City know whether it was supposed to be this system or that system? And Chris brings up a great point. Is I would love to know who are they going for, and they just can't sell this market, the St. Louis City market, the St. Louis, and not the coast. You know, a lot of especially
Marco
foreign
Royce.
players, yeah, exactly. A lot of the foreign players, they don't know, where St. Louis even is. They've never heard of it, and then trying to explain, yeah, it's a great place to play. It's going to be 105 in the summer, and then towards the end of the season or the beginning of the season, you're going to be freezing. It's like it's a tough sale. It's not a well known market. So I'd love to know: are they going for these guys to make a big signing and they just can't? Or is this their model? And it seems like Corey Ray in the past has kind of had this model of building up through the academy, these kind of unknown signings that just happen to make good. But my worry is the way the league is sort of trending. And I think Miami really proved this point this past year is it seems like you have to really go big or not go, or you will be going home because look what they did with their miracle magic of paperwork and numbers and how we still don't know how they're doing all this type of stuff. But if anything, they're proving like, hey, you may need to go get those names to be competitive because it could be a league that really relies on those DP spots.
Yeah, I mean they're premium roster spots. They're supposed to be, as Corey Wright calls them, difference makers. That's his patented phrase for a DP is calling him a difference maker. And right now, you could argue we only have Marcel Hartle. No disrespect to Roman Berkey, but he's a keeper. He's not going to be, outside of some miraculous saves, really making that big of a difference in terms of an outfield goal contribution prediction. So wrapping up the conversation on Cordova, real quick, guys, before we get to other news and notes, I'm just going to leave you with this simple question. Does this make us better? Yes or no?
I don't think it makes us worse. We'll just put it that way. I can't say it's going to make us better because he's not a guy that I see jumping straight into the starting 11. So if it was an impact player right out the get-go as far as coming in, and as well, like, I know we kind of have him as maybe second on the depth chart. If McSorley came in with kind of how he showed a little bit last year and how he's matured and how he can handle himself on the big stage, I wouldn't mind if McSorley was first off this bench as well. So I don't think it makes us. I don't look at this as like, yeah, this is the difference maker that we needed, but I don't think it's like something that I'm like, that's going to really hurt us and we'll be worse for.
Completely agree. You didn't even need me. Erik makes all the good points. So,
Yeah.
no, he's right. Does it make us better? Maybe. I mean, who knows? Like, yeah, like Erik said, it doesn't make us worse. Assuming that he's a good clubhouse guy and all the off the field stuff is fine, and he's not partying in New York and missing airplanes and all that stuff. Like,
Yeah.
as long as none of that stuff happens, then the minimum is it's an indifferent situation. And like Colton says, he's a body, right? Yeah, and there's been times, especially last year, where we could have used bodies. And so, um, you know, one of the things that we've talked about, or you guys have talked about, is the fact that in a lot more positions now, we have depth that has MLS experience.
Yes.
Whether it's
Mhm.
adding a Rafael Santos or adding an Edelman or, some of the guys we brought in the offseason, they have shifted and improved the floor of this club, right? And I think this is just another move that says, okay, this isn't something that's going to raise the ceiling, but it does improve the floor. It improves the striker depth, and that's not a bad thing. So.
And one to your point about MLS experience, Diego Gigliani, our president general manager, was on KMOX over the weekend. He specifically referenced the increase in MLS depth, basically saying nothing short of we're using this to help bridge the gap between where we were in 13th last year and getting us closer to the playoff spot. So the club is seemingly really buying into the idea that having more MLS experience is better than not. So. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see if that plays out. Some other news and news updates throughout the day today was first Justin Horniker and Matt Baker reporting that Mamadou Mbake, our new center back, who was signed some time ago, is finally in St. Louis, finally in training. Did train today. We have pictures in the app. So back line getting more depth. and Yohan Deme telling Matt Baker on flyover that and others in the media scrum that it'll be determined if he'll play. They need to get his fitness, get him integrated into the team. So expectation is he'll be available, but undetermined if he'll play at the weekend. Other news and notes, City did get some GAM. So Josh Sargent, if you have lived under a rock and not seen all the news, Josh Sargent's heading to Toronto officially. Basically, City getting up to $700 or $700,000 rather in GAM as part of it for his rights of first refusal. It's a guaranteed $500K with an additional 200 up to 200 additional for add-ons. And then the other big news of the day today, outside of Mbake's arrival, is City 2 related. And I wanted to keep this in, even though Jake is our resident City 2 expert. It is worth calling out. They start the season this weekend against SKC2, but they've signed a number of players today. A few of these names probably seem familiar to you guys. They were super draft picks and trialists for St. Louis City's first team during the preseason. Zach Lillington, the center back, Cooper Forcellini, the midfielder, Palmer Alt, the forward, all try, and even I think Sidney Paris was even down in Florida with the club as a defender. Jamone Barclay, I'm probably butchering that name, and then Nate Martinez, a goalkeeper. So among the players, most of them all signed through December of 2026 with the various options. I'm not quite sure, Eric, how much you follow City 2 or followed City during the preseason, so I'll start with you, Chris. Thoughts on Lillington landing with City 2 right out of the gate?
It's good. He needs to play. Anybody who watched him in the limited time that we're allowed to watch preseason could tell that this is a jump for him. And he is somebody that I think they're pretty high on. But he needs minutes and he needs development time. And, he's a guy that, especially if you look at now the way that our kind of roster shapes up with Mbake and Falu and Polvara, we've got some guys who you can hope, or you would hope, are going to be here for a year, 2 years, and maybe beyond. And so with a Lillington, you can look at him and say, okay, maybe this year he's a City 2 guy. Maybe next year they loan him out somewhere, and he gets more experience playing against adults. Maybe we call our new friends in Jacksonville and see if they got spots free. So yeah, I think they're going to take a long-term development track with him because I know that they do like him, and it's just a matter of him getting more experience at this level. So.
Yeah, I 100% agree with Chris there. Just on the fact of, you looked in the past of some City 2 guys that we maybe brought up with necessity, out of necessity or whatever. And one of those I would relate to was Miggy Perez that first year. We really kind of tried to almost, I felt like, rush him in, and he still needed to physically develop as well as develop to the speed of the game and the speed of that City 1. So I'm full agreement with Chris on a lot of these guys. Get some minutes, get some experience, get used to the physicality, get used to the stadium, just playing within the stadium. City 2, especially here, draws better than any, MLS Next Pro team. So get used to just being in front of those crowds and enjoying that, but also realize hey, look at some of the great examples that I have in front of me now. Miggy Perez, McSorley, Caden Glover occasionally. These guys have put in the work here, whether I get a loan or if I get the minutes and I just keep with it, maybe get a little bit of training time with the first team and show the experience with the big boys, I do have a chance, who knows, later on in the season where I could get a call up and feature and stuff. So give them minutes, but don't rush them.
And so for me, the name I'm looking at on this is Palmer Alt. So Alt was highly rated by, I believe it was Paul Harvey of the Outfield. He mentioned early in the preseason that he thought Palmer would find a way onto the roster. I'm excited to see how he'll play. With the departure of Emil Jääskeläinen from City 2, I don't know who's going to be leading the line for them, so I expect Palmer to get a shout. We could see Caden Glover even down there again, because we have not announced the off-roster loans or slot 31 designations on the senior roster yet either. So it's going to be interesting, too, guys, I think, to see how City 2 is approached, because Corey Ray's talked about that pipeline and development. So are we going to see City 2 more of a development team? What do you think, Chris?
100%. I think, the days of them trying to go all in to win Next Pro are probably getting behind us. And playing guys who are probably a little too old for that level. And I don't even think that you'll see it as now, there is some argument to be made to say, hey, if you've got a guy coming back off injury and he needs minutes, maybe you loan him down for a game and let him get some, get a run in a little bit. There's an argument to be made to do that. And similar to what baseball does in rehab assignments, kind of that kind of atmosphere. But I think for the general kind of vibe I'm getting from City 2 this year, and I think in past episodes Jake has kind of talked about it, this is definitely seems to be more of a plan of, hey, we need to go younger with it. We need to develop these guys. We need to see what we have in them, let them play. If they win, great. If not, it doesn't really matter. It's not that big of a deal. So, I think that part of their initial branding strategy was to create that cheaper, more family-oriented alternative to City and going to City 2 matches. I have season tickets for City 2. I love going to City 2 games. It's super fun. It's very chill. But at the end of the day, I'm not all that concerned anymore on if they win or lose. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier as far as like St. Louis not being the big market style, place where they may look at, and I know Corey Ray, when he was brought in, really hyped up the youth development and that type of stuff. Maybe City 2 is looking as sort of like, hey, if we're not attracting these big names and stuff like that, our best bet may be developing through our own academy and building up within, finding these little gems here and there that, can fill that spot, get a little bit more experience, and they could turn out for us. You look at some of the best clubs throughout the world, what is one thing that's really in common with a lot of those big clubs is their youth development and their academy players. And maybe that's City's model as it goes forward. If they are struggling with those big names and those big DP spots, is let's focus on that development through our City 2 and who we have, and then kind of try and build on from there.
Well, I think, one of the things that you can look at, probably the gold standard of, at least for MLS, of kind of homegrown and player development's always kind of been Philadelphia. And they've been always very highly rated for their development of players. And, and that's something that I think in a market like we've talked about, a Midwest market that you're not necessarily going to attract your highest end guys. I think you have to develop homegrowns. You have to develop that native talent that is going to come up through your system. And we're blessed to be in one of the absolute hotbeds of youth soccer in this country. And so there is no excuse for them not to develop guys now, and have all this talent that they can pull from in the area. And so it's going to be important for them to develop that kind of from the ground up. And so, I echo what Erik has said in that it's going to be very key for them as a sustainable model and a long-term model to have this, whether it's the academy or moving up into next pro, to have that, available to generate players and hopefully down the line to generate revenue. You want to get guys that you can turn around and sell and make money on. So.
So no, and I think you're both spot on. I think we're going to see a new era of for City 2, but I think it's for the betterment of the club. I think it's going to start to build that pipeline, and maybe maybe it's going to help. And I hate to say this, but it'll help avoid situations maybe like we're in a little bit with Caden Glover, where he's kind of hit a plateau, and I don't think he's ready for the first team. He's probably maybe too good to be at City 2. I don't know if that helps or makes that situation better, but I think it's going to be good to see City 2 pivot towards that more of a developmental side for us long term. So, but yeah, nice to see the roster take shape. I'll be curious to see how Lillington develops and learning more about some of the other guys on that list. But guys, we've had real soccer for the first time in, 4 or 5 months. Let's talk about that game from the weekend. Charlotte FC in town ends in a 1-1 draw, as you see on the screen for those watching on YouTube. We'll get into the stats and break it down. The XI, not to toot our own horn, we actually picked it. Not that it was rocket science. I was talking to Tom at the game in the North End, but we nailed 11 for 11 on the starting 11, and just going to quickly run through it. Of course, Roman Berkey, our captain in net. The defensive line in front of him, Haziel Orozco, Timo Baumgartel, Dante Polvara. Your midfielders, Conrad Vollum, Chris Durkin, Edelman, Rafael Santos, Sengbin Jong, Marcel Hartl, and Simon Betcher rounded out your starting 11. Anything jump out at you from that starting 11?
Go ahead, Erik.
No, I don't think so. Just from what we have available, obviously still a few missing parts as far as the falls, and then, Leuven obviously still dealing with what he's got going. So outside of that, I think, it was from what we saw with preseason, it was maybe what he saw as far as the best that fits the system. And I think that was the key as far as like it felt like he put guys in their right positions and where they would maybe shine best. When you look at like, Santos and Valum, who both maybe are great getting forward, but maybe lack a little bit defensively, having them out on those wings kind of eluded or alleviated a little bit of that defensive responsibility in there. So I think it was a good just overall selection as far as the starting 11. Nothing that I really felt like, that's a weird one.
Yeah, agreed. I didn't really expect anything too out of the ordinary. The Orozco thing was maybe slightly surprising, but I mean, overall, I think as we saw, it was a solid lineup. And I saw some people kind of maybe question Betcher up top compared to Toychert, but I don't think that was all that unexpected. Betcher's basically been kind of the first choice in preseason, so yeah, I was not surprised. So. Yeah, and Jeremy, it looks like you need to head out, so go ahead. I'm happy to kind of take the reins, so we'll talk to you as soon as you can come back. So Erik, as far as your impressions of the game itself, the roster, we just talked about. So, how was the getting back into the park? Let's talk about the overall experience. Getting back, I know I was super happy to get back and see some live soccer. What was your kind of take on the day as a whole? Not necessarily just the on field stuff.
Yeah, I mean, just the day. I mean, opening day, it's just great. It was interesting it being a day game. I'm not sure if you liked the opening day ceremony or everything kind of being day, or if you prefer the night where you get the lights and everything else interacted. But it just felt great being back and just drive being from the Illinois side, just not driving downtown very often. It was just kind of like, oh man, this is all like coming back again. And then what I was really just pleasantly surprised with, not that I wasn't expecting it, but just how things have kind of turned a little bit towards the past year is the energy was back. I felt like as far as like the crowd, full stadium, the whole lower bowl standing again, and just kind of like, you know, that feeling of like, hey, we're back. And I feel like that truly does, especially in this league, can carry the teams as far as that energy goes. A lot of the most, dangerous teams that you have within the MLS, you always say, yeah, going there in that atmosphere is always tough. So it was great to see that, like, it just felt like great being back again. It was weird, like getting those alerts for the starting 11 being like, oh yeah, like let's get into this and that type of stuff. And then new food in the stadium. There's just a lot of like, it really felt like somebody took the Men in Black thing, the memory eraser from a lot of the fans, because it didn't feel like, to me, just from within the stadium, it was like, oh, let's see what we can pull out. It felt just a positive atmosphere. The energy was there. I think that was what the city really needed as far as just kicking the season off.
Yeah, I think that you made a good point, and actually that I did just popped in my head. This is all three of us are East Side residents, so this is the
Oh
maybe
yeah,
only time we'll ever have three East Siders running this thing at once. So we can celebrate the 618 for a little bit.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, you brought up the fact that it was a day game. What I was more disappointed in was not the fact that it was a day game for us, because day games were fun. And for those of us who aren't in the South End, who are on the North Side, the sun was nice because it was nice and warm in the sun.
Yeah, yeah.
Unlike the people in the South who were, acting like it was, a blanket and hot chocolate time, which it was for them. In the sun, it was great. So that helped. And I think they are going to have to, once they go to the changed calendar and there's going to be a little more wintertime or cold weather, having daytime cold weather games helps. It's certainly not as bad as cold and nighttime. um so that wasn't bad. The thing I was a little, not a little, very disappointed in was this was the kickoff game for the MLS season, and Apple did basically nothing. There was no pregame show, there was no on field anything from to kind of kick stuff off. Everything was so oriented and focused on some of the other games around the league. I know Apple had sent basically all of their kind of primary broadcast teams and hype people for Sunday night's LAFC game, and so it's like, yeah, we're supposed to be the kickoff match, right? Like we're the starting match of the season, and they acted like we were just the fourth game of the day, and random. So that was disappointing. My biggest takeaway from the off-field stuff was, yeah, it was a lot of, okay, where are the new food vendors? Where are the my wife especially, where's the biscuit place? I need to find that, like, so and it's not surprising to me that you, as a South End supporter, did bring up the food situation, which I think we're going to get into in the final third, and get your opinion on some of that stuff. But yeah, it was really good to just be back amongst my soccer friends, and the people who I hang out with before the games, and just to get to see people that I haven't seen in a while. And that's the thing is, obviously we want our team to play well and do well, and and enjoy the on-field product, but the off-field part of it is just as important to me, and getting to see everybody. So yeah, I had a great time, and the fact that they did play, reasonably well, obviously enhances that. So Jeremy, what was your kind of impression?
No, echo a lot of what you say. I'm happy to be back in the stadium with my friends. Happy to get to see a lot of faces I haven't seen in several months. More than happy to say soccer is back in town. And for me, this season's going to be a lot more fun because I'm going to be a capo. So I'm going to be having a lot more fun in the North End, probably losing my voice a little bit more, which is a good thing when we're on Tuesdays and not Sundays or Mondays. Get a little bit of vocal cord recovery time in. But no, I'm more than anything. That's kind of my happy place. I call it my therapy because I can go and forget about the world for a few hours. And so I'm just happy City Soccer is back. And like you said, Chris, they played pretty well. We were to jump into this game a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, right from the start, guys, City went right to the goal off that opening kickoff, which, Erik, you were talking about energy. If that didn't get the crowd up on their feet and energetic, I don't know what would have. But, having a chance in the first 30 seconds certainly was even though it didn't come off, was kind of a statement of intent, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was still like trying to figure out, like, I think my wife just got back with like a drink or something like that, and I just hear like the levels rise around me, and I'm like, yeah, kick off and all, and then I realized like, oh, they went for it. So it was almost kind of like, hey, it caught me off guard. I guess it caught Charlotte off guard as well. It was just good, like seeing that sort of like, hey, we're here, and it's a different, almost like City had like that year behind us. Last year's behind us. Like, this is us going forward, and we're gonna, come back. They keep talking about the City style and the City energy and this type of stuff. And what better way to just demonstrate that than the first minute of the game? And just like, hey, on those situations, you never know. Charlotte could have been like, this is the team of the past. They kick it back to Berkey. He sends it long. You never know what can come off of that. So it's just good seeing that it was just like they're going to match the fandom energy.
Yeah, and again, and I think for me it was nice seeing, because for many, even this is the first meaningful football we've seen probably under Johan de May, and starting to see what some of his intent and his tactics might look like. Of course, the first minute isn't that, but you start to see as the game evolved, Chris, in the eighth minute, we start to slow down play. We see Timo Baumgartel stepping on the ball at midfield, really slowing it down to try to draw Charlotte out, and it was really a lot of that over the first probably 30 minutes or so before we saw our first real shot on goal. What did you make of the first 30 minutes or so of that game, Chris?
The thing that I was the most curious to see that actually came to pass was how high our wingbacks played. This was something that, especially coming off the start of last season when we were essentially playing 9 people on defense with Olaf Ball. To see how high Santos was, to see how high Valum was, and especially how aggressive in those first 30 minutes Valum was, and also, full credit to Yazio Orozco and Valum for the physicality they showed against Zaha. He was frustrated all day long. Orozco, that may be the best game. I know he had a goal last year, but that's the best game I've seen Orozco play for City. And he was in his face the entire time, driving him nuts, frustrating him. There was a breakdown on the one goal, and that happens. The guy's a great player and he made a great pass, but the first 30 minutes I thought City controlled the game. Now, that's to be expected with Charlotte. This is the way a Dean Smith club is going to play. They're going to be very passive. They're going to hand you the ball. They're going to let you keep the ball, and they're going to try and hit you on the counterattack. But I thought City imposed their will, imposed the pace of play that they wanted, which is something that has always been an issue, is trying to make sure that we play the style and the pace that we want to. And so, yeah, I mean, it's certainly something that from a tactical standpoint, I think they kind of did what they wanted especially in the first half. Yeah.
And to your point, Wallum and Santos combined, they were the first real, outside of the Betcher shot, the next real good shot we had, probably the best of the half, was Conrad Wallum in the 30th minute, where Santos whips across the box, goes off of, I think it was Andrew Privett's head right to Wallum, and he volleys it over. But I think, to your point, the thing that really jumped out at me, and Chris, Erik, jump in here too, is we in the past have not known what to do with the ball when we have it. If a team says, give us the ball, we struggle. I felt like in the first half, we had 9 shots in the first half, while the end product and quality wasn't there in all of them. We at least seemingly knew what to do with the ball and how to get it from one end of the field to the other somewhat regularly.
Yeah. As Ray Kirsting said in the chat, it looked like we had a plan to attack, for the first time in a while. I don't know if I 100% agree with that, because there were times under David Critchley where we were pretty heavy offensively, but it looked like we were more organized offensively than we have been in a while, and obviously that's, I mean, that's a good sign. The thing I commented to several people was, man, imagine this style with more talent.
Yeah.
It'll be awfully fun, because it looked very similar to what Columbus does, and that's obviously to be expected with Jan DeMay coming from Columbus. So I think if you raise the level of talent on this club from a player perspective, and part of that is guys you're missing. Obviously we're missing Edu, and Mbake wasn't here yet, and Falu isn't ready because of injury. You talk about adding those 3 guys to this lineup and then going out and getting a legit 9. It's exciting, and you try to temper that a little bit, because you're like, hey, this is still not going to be a top 1 or 2 team in the West, but you could see a competitive spirit to the way they were playing. And if you add talent, then yes, I think it's going to be a much improved club if they play like that. And again, they're gonna get to look good because of the style that Charlotte plays, which is, hey, you can have the ball you want, right? So they're going to look good when they're controlling the ball. It's going to be, obviously we're going to talk about it later, but it's going to be more interesting when they have to play against a team like San Diego, who wants the ball and wants to impose their will, and it'll be interesting to see if they can still do that against a team like that. So,
yeah, I think also with the wingbacks getting forward and being so present in the attack, one thing that I think really helped, that was a big change from last year, is how quick they got it out. It wasn't, we got it down to the final third and then panicked and then circled it back around, allowed them to get back in their defensive shape. It was once Wallum got in and he saw space to get in across, he put it in there. Whether Betcher was in position or not, just put it in the mix and see what can happen. And I felt like Santos did it well. Santos, maybe it could have been a little bit more clinical with his crossing ability that day, but I thought it was just the fact that they got it up. But what I really think propelled City as well, and what was lacking a lot last year was, and I don't know if you noticed this more in the second half as I did in the first, with anytime we got the ball up, that defense was moving out with a purpose. So rather than having this big gap between the offense and the defense, when we did get forward, say we panicked because nobody's up there, we just moved well as a unit and everybody kept their shape. And I feel like that was really what helped propel us getting forward, was just holding the shape, everybody moving with a purpose. There wasn't a big gap between the offense and the defense. And then we brought that physicality back, but for the first time in a while, we brought it back smartly. There was a lot of chances where, like Durkin, who's known for just those reckless tackles, he let out of those tackles. He kept it physical, but he could have easily went in on a couple, especially on a couple breaks where he could have easily clipped heels, and he held back. And I think that was a big change. But Orozco and Wallum really got in Zaha's head, and it was just a physicality. And the big shout out to Orozco as being such a young guy and just not being intimidated by somebody like Wilfred Zaha, who has such amazing experience in Premier League and all that type of stuff. He just held his ground. He was physical, but wasn't over the top, and he kept his composure. And so I think a lot of those things is really what shined for City on the day.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on YouTube right now, we've got a graphic up. We're showing the average positioning of the team. And when you talk about structure, you see a clear back three covering the width of the field. You see those wing backs pushed almost as high as your forwards, and it looks like almost even higher than Simon Betcher, especially when you're talking about Vollum on the right side. There, and then there's a control map again. The Viz courtesy of MLS Stat. Catalina Bush does a great job putting these together and sharing them with all of us through American Soccer Analysis. But yeah, City really dominant, controlling even the momentum flow chart. You could see in the first half, pretty much all City, and then especially even after Charlotte got that goal in the second half. But first half ends scoreless. The thing that impressed me as we pivot into the second half a little bit is even when City was caught out a little bit, there were a few moments in the first half where City was caught out, and even getting into the second half. But it was that transition, that the commitment to getting back into position as a unit on defense. If you watch, there were several instances where you could time from ball loss to the time where they start to get 7 or 8 guys behind the ball, and it took like 4 seconds or less, and it just completely nullified any transition that Charlotte could do. That's one thing that jumped out at me.
Yeah,
But
I think that one of the things that our defense played reasonably well. I was listening to Inside City Limits, Cole Sutton and those guys this morning, and right after I listened to you guys, Eric, and you and Dave last night. So,
thank you.
no problem. We'll give our guest a plug for sure. Make sure you check out South End Supporters anywhere you get your podcast. But I was listening to Inside City Limits, and one of the guys that was talking to Cole said that they talked about Dante Polvera, and he said, I didn't think about him. And when you think about it from a center back perspective, that's usually a good sign.
Yes.
Like if you don't think about your center backs, that means nothing really exciting is going on, right? And there's no panic and there's no issue, So yeah, I think that, defensively, I think probably the guy who had the weakest game was Timo, and he didn't play terribly. I mean, he had probably more concerning moments, but nothing that was, too, make you shake your head or just, not believe that he can do the job. But Polvera is a guy that it's going to be a development process because that was basically his first time playing center back. So, his willingness to stick his nose in and make defensive tackles was evident. His quality on the ball is very evident, and that's going to be really nice, especially when you factor in if it's him and Mbake and Falu, there may not be a better 3 on the ball center back combination in the whole league. I mean, those 3 together on the ball is going to be great. And so, yeah, I mean, overall, I think, especially in the first half, they played about as well as you could expect them to play.
Yep. Second half a little bit different. Charlotte grows into the game. It's a little bit more evenly played, it felt like, for most of that second half. The one thing that first jumped out at me was in the 50th minute, City's continued commitment to throwing guys forward into the box for crosses. And in that instance, there was a ball played out to the left to Santos, and there are 4 guys sprinting into the box to get into the cross. You had Hartle, Betcher, Sangbin, and then on the far post, Conrad Vollum. So, I mean, the commitment to getting bodies forward showed there, and that commitment kind of continues because in the 60th minute is when City gets the breakthrough. Charlotte cycles the ball back to their keeper. Kalina plays it out to his left and ultimately comes forward to Zaha, who is immediately pressured by Orozco. He turns it over. Ball goes to Edelman, and in 3 passes or less, they're from midfield to Hartle at the edge of the box, and the ball's in the back of the net, and it's 1-0 City.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead, Eric.
First off, just as far as you hit it on the head, Jeremy, with there, how quick it was. Edelman didn't overtake his dribbles, and I think he was pretty good on that day as far as like what you want from a 6 is pick your moments when you do choose to hold on to it, but that's the last person you want losing the ball because typically they'll come in transition. So him getting out quick, and then, I mean, what an assist from Betcher. Just, just feeling that presence of Hartle coming back post. And then, like we talked about, Hartle didn't second guess it, didn't take an extra touch that was unneeded, give that keeper to come out and take away the angle. First time shot, and it was just a beautiful goal as far as like the pressure, the way they moved the ball, and then the finish. It just was. This is the type of stuff. If you're missing somebody like a Leuven in that midfield, and this isn't a knock at Durkin, but I wouldn't say that's his specialty as being that creative outlet pass type stuff. So when you're needing that, sometimes the quick movements and catching them on the counter is what's really going to benefit you. And I feel like in that instance, that was showing of what you can do if you move the ball quick and precise and look for those types of stuff. I mean, it was just a beautiful goal.
It was, and and I don't know what you saw in this moment, Chris, but to me, just hearing a lot of what Yohan Demay has said and talked about, this seems to be one of those hallmarks where he wants his team to play fast when they can.
Yeah, Edelman, especially in the preseason, made a point to say that I want to prove that I'm better on the ball than people think I have been with New York. He made, he had the hockey assist on the Hartle goal. He also had a nice long ball to Betcher that Betcher flicked past Tim Ream and then got eventually pushed out wide, which was another, pretty quality scoring chance. And so Edelman showed the ability to find seams and hit those longer passes, which is something that's going to be important. Yes, you want to control the ball in this style, but if you're slow with it and you're predictable, then defenses know that, okay, there is no threat of getting beat. You have to maintain the at least appearance that you're willing to go long with the ball on occasion. And that's going to be helped when Mbake shows up, because that's one of his hallmarks is playing long switches and deep balls and trying to hit home runs. And I'm sure we're going to see at least a few home run attempts to Sangmin every now and then, which is going to be really super fun. But yeah, the ability of your midfielders to find seams in defenses and create those runs is important. And so, yeah, I was very impressed with Edelman on the ball. Edelman and Orozco kind of made the mistake on the Zaha goal, which we might talk about, but overall, nothing but impressed with how Edelman handled himself in the midfield.
Yeah, I mean, and for large stretches of the game, again, first half City was in control. There was one moment, and it started kind of in the 67th minute. We start to see Charlotte having success, and Dean Smith talked about it after the game. They adjusted and started wanting to play more of an inside, outside, back inside game to start to create passing lanes within the City defense. They did it really well in the 67th minute, and then it comes back in the 73rd minute when they're able to play through the City defense. Volum tries to press Zaha. Zaha gets past him, passes it out wide to, I believe it was David Schnegg. At that moment, Daniel Edelman is covering for Orozco because Orozco has had to step wide to cover for Volum. So Edelman is tracking Pep Biel into the box. The ball goes from Schnegg back to Zaha. By this point, Edelman is starting to step forward, leaving Biel alone in behind Orozco. And it ends up with Zaha playing a nice pass between the channel to Pep Biel, who goes far post past Berkey to ultimately get us our equalizing score of 1-1, which is where the game ended. What did you guys see on that goal?
So I did some video analysis of it that I posted this week, and it was just very unfortunate timing. The millisecond that Edelman tried to kind of shift forward in his positioning is exactly when Zaha went to make that pass. And Edelman not abandoned it. He created a passing lane by just slightly moving to his left, while Orozco and Edelman basically simultaneously turned their heads to look at Zaha and lost track of where Beal was. And so, and it's an unfortunate thing that, again, you're having Edelman drop into a space where Orozco should have been, but Orozco, it wasn't really his fault because, again, he was trying to cover for Volum, and so there was some guys out of where they normally would be positioned. And it was just one of those things where a very good player made a very nice pass to another very good player who, had a nice goal. And sometimes those things are just unavoidable. So I think it's as simple as that, but I don't know, Erik, if you had a different take on it.
No, I think you're exactly right. Just missed timing. Like you said, Edelman went to step. They both went to step. It could just be youth, better communication there. Maybe could have, solved that. But again, you have a split second on that. So the communication even is tough to deal in there. And like you said, it's just a good player who looks for those types of little mistakes to where they can prey upon those. And then, just a good finish. So I'm hoping that more time with those guys together, more playing minutes and just familiar with the team, communication and that type of stuff. Those types of things can get ironed out to where it's like, he just made that run. He's pressing high. I'm just going to hold here. And once we get possession back and then we shift into transition, that's when we can kind of do our, switch back and stuff. So, you hope that's just what it was. It's just a little lack of whatever in that moment. And as the season goes on, these guys get more familiar with each other, communication, all that type of stuff. You can iron out those little things as the season goes.
And I mean, ultimately, guys, from the time the equalizer is had, City kind of takes the game back over again, especially after the 80th minute. There's like 3 or 4 really good chances. Betcherin on a breakaway in the 81st, McSorley in the 90th, and then Toykert has 2 chances after the 95th minute, and then right at the whistle, Brendan McSorley with the last kick has a shot on goal as well. So really, you leave feeling like City played well enough to win that game. Probably should have won that game if you look at the quality of chances. Marcel Hartl, who scored the lone goal, was arguably the most impactful player for City, named a team of the match day. He agreed with that. He thought they should have had more from that game, saying, quote, "We made a very, very good game from the beginning. We set the tone. That was the plan. We took control of the game and we want to create chances. We want to be aggressive against the ball, high press, and all of our plans were good. And the result is not good enough," end quote, from the vice captain and team of the match day player, Marcel Hartl. And that was really the way she wrote it. Do you guys agree with Marcel? Do you think City deserved more from that game?
Yeah. As we learned Sunday morning, goalies can win you games. So, it happens. Kalina played great. And, it was one of those things where, Toycher could have scored and Santos hit a crossbar on a deflected free kick. And, they had opportunities, and you hope that, some of those bounces start to go their way in the future, but overall, I think you can be very encouraged by the play. But again, they need to show that they can do this consistently against various styles that they're going to face this year.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I relate it to, I would have maybe liked to seen subs a little bit earlier, just for those guys that you touched on, McSorley and Toychert, to grow into the game a little bit more. Having it that late and having your first touches be, kind of quick in the box, you're shooting and all that. You kind of want to grow into the game as you come in, get your first touches as some simple passes. That way you build that confidence. And I know Toychert tried that with that long range effort as maybe his kind of grow into the game. I also put this up to like just early season getting those game time touches. There's a big difference between training with your teammates that aren't going to press you as hard and that type of stuff, and then finding yourself in a quick box. I had this as they could have easily won it 3-4-1. Goalie made a couple great saves, especially taking away the angle, like on that McSorley breakaway, and then, just making himself big for Toychert. I think Toychert picks a corner. Either one of those, you get a win in there. But it's exciting. We touched on as far as the crowd atmosphere after that goal, the crowd still rose, and they were sensing that the guys needed that pickup. And then we saw it towards the end of the game. I think it gives you something to build on. But as Chris says, we got a real tough stretch here coming up. So, that's great, but show me that you can still do it with some of the best in the West.
Yeah, and that's going to be the test. I know Yohan Demey felt it was something that a performance to build on, focusing on a lot of the positives. He did say post-game that they would have things to work on, including like the defensive structure, kind of knowing when more to go quick and slow, and then be slow, be more deliberate. And I think, Chris, you hit the nail on the head earlier when you talked about what's going to happen when we play teams that want to impose their style on us, and how do we react. I think we'll see that against San Diego.
Yeah, for sure. Going to be a completely different style that we'll be facing, and again, we'll see what that evolves into with not only the lineup, who's available, who's going to travel, who's not going to travel, and then are they the type of team that's going to go into places and say, hey, we want to try to get 3 points, or are they going to be the type of team that says we want to play for ties on the road, and because that's a theory that can create not all that exciting soccer, but ultimately results. So yeah, we'll definitely be in a different environment come Saturday with San Diego on deck.
Erik, before I pivot to San Diego preview time, what's your last takeaway from that game on Saturday against Charlotte?
Obviously excitement, just being back and watching the team in a competitive atmosphere and giving an exciting game to build off of. But that being the key word, build off of. There's still some things that need a lot of improvement, but it does. Everybody's in early season form, so let's see how it's going when the rest of the teams are getting back into form. And like Chris said, who travels and who doesn't, and how they can adjust to different game systems and game plans. I like the idea of, you're right, in some of those tough atmospheres, eking out a draw is going to be important. But as we saw a couple years ago, you squander too many of these chances and get too happy with draws. Eventually, you run out of time to gain those points that you need for that playoff position. So maybe picking and choosing how the games are going, but not going into these games of, let's just come out of here with a point. Hey, let's make adjustments. And if we need to get out of here with a point, we do so. But optimism with what is available to us, and hoping we can build from there and have an exciting season.
Erik, I just heard you say we're winning the West. Thank you for the optimism.
You heard it here first.
I'm glad. I know I'm a little zoomed out, but I'm glad you whole time you could see me winking as like, yeah. I've got a little room on my arm still. Start the tattoo machine now. I'll put it down as 2026 MLS champs. Yeah.
Ray Kirsting in the chat made a good point, which is, he said the best thing about the game is that Energizer Park delivered. Our fans showed up.
Yes.
And we need to keep our stadium full. It's our brand. I was pleasantly surprised at the amount of people standing. I had put a poll online earlier in the week saying, hey, do you plan to stand or sit? And it was close. And certainly the excitement of an opening game, you've not been beaten down by a long bad season. Because I know towards the end of last year, those of us who aren't in the supporter section, who are in actual seats, I don't blame people. When you're out of the playoffs and it's hot and it's just, you're waiting for the season to get over with, I don't blame people for sitting down. But yeah, it was nice to see the enthusiasm in the stadium and everybody, excited to be back. And it was a very pleasant surprise to see that many people, still standing, still cheering, and it was nice. So.
It was. I'm hoping we take some of that with us to San Diego because, guys, it's going to be a test. The defending, one of the best in the West last year. I think they won the West, if I remember correctly. Yep. And so it's going to be a test. We are winless against San Diego, and we did get a chance to talk to one of the local podcasts out there, Chromatic FC. So they shared some thoughts with us on their side, saying, quote, the biggest difference is how much Chucky Lozano will be missed, and if those players replacing him can replace that production. So far, it's been working with a couple of Champions Cup matches and a regular season match under their belt. But other differences is how much the team is getting younger, choosing to replace players like Lawfulson and Franco Negri with even younger and more inexperienced players. Their expectations, though, not lowered, saying, quote, most fans want the team to win something in year two. So if it's possible to make a deep run in the Champions Cup or Leagues Cup, and most of all, make the playoffs as the top 4 seed. That was the first part of their statement from us. They continued to go on and talk more about the rest of their expectations for the win over Montreal. They scored 5 against Montreal over the weekend, saying, quote, 5 different goals from 5 different players. Anders Dreyer had some involvement in all 3 of those goals. They cite Dreyer is pushing the ball forward for the team. Also great to see Marcus Ingvarsson get a goal and an assist, saying he's one of the players fans hope to see more from in 2026. And then in terms of their roster turnover, they didn't really lose a lot. Chucky Lozano is still on the roster, but isn't going to be playing for them. They did lose Patty McNair. He's went over to Hull City on a permanent transfer. And then I did ask them about style of play. They said, quote, the style of play won't ever change. They are part of the right to dream style of playing, and they're all about lots of possession, short passes, and high pressing. It all starts with playing out of the back. So thoughts from Chromatic FC. Thank you to them for giving us some local insight from afar. They're 2-0-1 in all competitions. They have a win over Pumas and a loss to Pumas in the Champions Cup under their belt. They advanced on aggregate 4-2. And then, as I just mentioned, beat Montreal 5-0 on opening weekend. Guys, what are your thoughts as we head to San Diego?
It's all about Dreyer. There are very few teams in this league that are more dependent on one player than they are on him. But he's that good. He needs to be a monster for them again this year in order for them to have that same or approach that same level of success, but he's a beast. Yeah, I mean, and if it kind of all begins and ends with him, and if City can frustrate him or keep him contained, then that's going to give them an opportunity to maybe get out of there with a point and at least have some sort of positive result. To me, this is a game that I'm going to look more on how they play and the style of play and how they look than I am at the end result. So if they don't come out of there with any points, but they still played pretty well, I think we can be, maybe we can take some solace in that and say, yeah, you know what, this is the beginning phase of this rebuild. And if they look pretty good and even don't, get a result, then maybe it's okay, this early in the season. But obviously, to get any kind of result out there would be fantastic. So that's kind of my expectation, is maybe we don't get anything, but boy, it would be nice. So, Erik, what do you think?
100% with you on the statement, especially of just keep me excited. Show me that, if it is one of the best teams in the West, we can go head to toe with them. And especially early on the season, Dryers is a problem. He's good, man. He's just really, it was one of those like where they hyped him up that first year for San Diego. I was like, yeah, let's see. And then it was just like, yeah, this guy is it. You got to keep track of him. One thing that I also know that he likes to do is, while they're maybe defending it, he'll just stay around half field and just look for that quick outlet pass. I know they love possession, but I put them in LAFC as one of those teams that really scare me in transition and catching you on the break in the counter attack. So you got to keep track of him, because he really, like, everything goes through him. But what we've seen City do in the past is when there is kind of like an isolated superstar that teams kind of move around, if they can shut them down, they do well as the game goes on. And I don't want to go into it with let's just try and eke out anything we can. It's early in the season. Yeah, they put up 5-0 against Montreal. Montreal's not the greatest team. They also got a red card. So, like, let's just look at the end of the day, like, it's just another team in this West. So go treat them like that and, make adjustments as you need. Don't go in there overzealous, feel out the game for the first couple minutes and stuff like that. But just know what you need to do. You need to keep that shape. You need to keep track of their runners, because they're very good in small spaces, finding those guys in the box. And what they did against Montreal is when they took those shots, they made them count. And, that's what we didn't do against Charlotte. So not allowing them a lot of space to take those shots, because they really do. Keep Dryers off that left foot for all you can when he is anywhere near the box, and just delivery and all that. So, hey, maybe that's just the game plan. Maybe you take somebody like an Edelman, who's just like, hey, I remember the old Man U days, and I'm sorry for all the other people who hate Man U that I keep referencing him, but there was a very famous Champions League game where Andre Pirlo was for AC Milan, and Sir Alex Ferguson gave Ji-sung Park, who's like kind of a cult hero, not really known as one of the greater players, but amongst Man U fans, he means a lot. He just told him, all I want you to do is keep him in your back pocket all game. And Man U dominated AC Milan, who was probably just as equal of a good team, but what they did was shut out their life source. And I feel like Dryers is that for San Diego. So if you can really do a good job of just shutting him out, you can do a really good job as far as shutting the rest of the team out. You go in there, and I think this is going to be one of those teams with what we have available to us, where a lot of these games, if we do eke out these games, it's going to be a 1-0, a 2-1, and we come away with it. If we are going to get the 3 points here, I see it being that, but we have to make sure that we keep them controlled and that atmosphere in check as the game goes on. Hopefully we grow into it and we can eke one out, but get anything out of there and just show me some excitement, and I'll be, content.
Yeah, the reigning MLS newcomer of the year and Anders Dreyer are going to be a big first test for an away day for St. Louis City. Mikey Varas, the head coach for San Diego, kind of talking about what you guys have both said. They're going to be a team that wants to exploit spaces. And he's also stressed the importance of them staying compact in their shape and wants to play through their opponents. So that's, almost to the letter of the T of what you guys have said. So it's almost like you guys have been listening to Mikey talk. But no, so with that, we it's a little too early to give a prediction on who might be in the XI, but just for sake of having a little fun, how do you guys feel score wise? I think Tom's given us a 3-1 loss, so he's picking San Diego to win 3-1. As our guest host extraordinaire, Erik Cole, we'll start with you.
Well, 3 years ago, we quit making predictions on our show because we were always very wrong on those. So, I don't want to. We're obviously not going to be the favorite in this. You see the big shift in MLS home teams just on how they're favored and how well they do at home, and then a team like this. I would like to see, like a 1-1, 2-2 draw, but I think overall I'm going to go 2-1 San Diego. But I hope that 2-1 is we're in that game and we feel like if we had those here or there, that could have been our game if we do lose. But I would like to see us be competitive, and I hope I'm wrong. And I'm often am. So there we go.
Well, don't worry. So Jake predicted a 4-1 loss to Charlotte. We ended up with a draw. So you've got a little bit. You've got some wiggle room. Chris, where do you think we stand?
In thinking about this, I had memories of maybe the most exciting game in ever played on the road for City, which is the Galaxy game of last year, which was the up and down the field, back and forth. And I was like, that might be what this turns into. It might just be a offensive kind of pressing and counter pressing, and so yeah, I think ultimately San Diego is just deeper and more talented and farther along in their kind of process. And so I'm going to go. I thought about 4-2, but I'm going to go 3-2 San Diego.
Okay, so that leaves me. I can't disagree with anything you guys have said. I think we're still missing Leuven. Probably he didn't train today. Some questions on the back line. San Diego has a lot of quality. I want a competitive game more than anything, where we can see the system, where we see progress on that system. But I'm okay. I want it to be close. Don't get embarrassed. Let's go. I'll go 2-1 loss to San Diego. I think that's a respectable result away from home and a place we've yet to win. Kyle Hebert's the only goal scorer for us against San Diego so far. That's got to change, but we'll see. But guys, it's been fun chatting City with you for about an hour, a little over now. Erik, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, go listen to South End supporters, but do us a favor, plug yourself, tell us where we can find you and the rest of your South End supporter buddies.
Well, first off, thanks for having me. This has been a blast, and hopefully we can all do it again soon because I love being here, and you guys are amazing. This is a great show, so it's just awesome being here. But yeah, South End supporters, we try our best to get one out a week, and keep up with us on our socials. Instagram, we're South End supporters. Twitter and Reddit, @SDS_podcast SDL. Facebook, YouTube, and then as for myself, if you want to see a 36-year-old fall on a skateboard or play crappy drums, my Instagram is ecole_15. So you can follow me there as well. But yeah, just thank you guys for having me on. This was a lot of fun.
Well, look, the J. Clemlins have been called off. We're officially friends now. The pod wars are over. We're putting that to rest. We're all friends here. Chris, you do great stuff. I know you're getting into you spread the content more than anyone I know on the planet. But you've been putting together some really great video work. Can you tell folks where to find your stuff?
Yeah, just at STL Soccer News and then stlsoccernews.com. Hope to continue putting stuff out just to help analyze and explain and create discussion about plays from the games. And, anything that sparks discussion and debate is always going to be fun. And if we can help people who may not understand why a certain play developed the way it did, or why a certain thing happened, then that's great, and that's what I want to try to do as part of why I'm doing the videos and the video clips this year. So just stlsoccernews.com, and thanks for having me, Jeremy, and on this side of the camera for once. So I appreciate it.
We're always glad to have you on the other side of the green curtain. So for Chris, thank you. Erik, thank you. For Chris, for Erik, for Jake, and for Tom, I am Jeremy Clemens. Thank you again for watching the latest edition of Red Smoke Rising. We'll be back next week with more All for City content. So until then, we'll catch you next time.
All right, we're good.
All right, time to take a breath, let the shoulders down, as Tom would say. It's time for the final third, ladies and gentlemen. Time to have some fun, get the chat involved in the conversation. So if there's something you want to know, something that you're interested in chatting about, please pop in to the chat, and we'll do our best to get to your thoughts and your comments. But with one of my favorite podcast folks on the show, Erik. I've got to start with food in honor of the South End slobs because I like you. I'm a fellow foodie.
There we go.
So what? And I apologize.
Foodie, come on.
I love footy and I love food. Okay, footy. What do you? I mean, I'm not going to steal flyover foodie. That's Matt Baker and their stuff. That was really smart by them. But no,
Yes.
I love food. So, and I apologize, I haven't had the chance to catch your show. I don't know if you talked about it yet, but if you have or haven't, what food option that's new this year or returning are you most excited to have? I guess you may have already been to the stadium, but what's got you excited food wise at the park this year?
Ooh, I mean, all food. That's one thing that I do love about, like, City Park or Energizer Park, whatever you want to call it, is that the food. I mean, you can't really go wrong. Yeah, right. You can't really go wrong as far as, like, I love that you can show up there and be like, I'm in the mood for this, or you could show up there and be like, I don't know what I want, and all your bases are pretty covered, and adding in new spots and that type of stuff. Like, my wife, we went to the game and she was just like, she made a beeline for chicken scratch because she was just craving the chicken tendies. And it was just like, hey, they do them well and they do that scratch sauce. But I was like, I'm going to try, every year my goal is to try more and more new things and stuff like that. Because a lot of these places, again, you guys know, being on the ill side, I don't know how much you get to make it over to Missouri, but a lot of these places are, Missouri based. So I don't get to make them out there as much. And a lot of these places also are a little bit more sophisticated for me to try and take my kids and enjoy those places. So it's nice for me to get to experience. I actually checked out one of the new spots, the Biscuit Town, there that day. When I saw the picture, it looked like an egg, bacon, and cheese on the biscuit that they promoted Biscuit Town with. And then, I've said it many times before, I have a sweet tooth. And then the problem is I kept scrolling on the app, and then down at the bottom, they have 2 dessert options. And so as full adults on Parents' Day out, my wife got chicken tenders and then I got a dessert. And so that's how we, like kids with it, in a candy store with a unlimited budget, that's how we decided to spend it. But yeah, it looks like, a lot of good new options in there. I think there's a coffee spot, the biscuit place. I think there's another taco place, which I'm excited to check out. And then also I think there's a pizza spot that's Detroit style. And I haven't had Detroit style yet before. Yeah. So did you guys on the day partake in food?
I did not. We went in the morning to Blue Jay Brewing, who was doing brunch, and so there was quite a few of us who were over there for a little bit, getting food and hanging out and talking. And I'd be interested, and first off, before we go any further, there's 120 of you in chat right now. Thank you so much. We really appreciate everybody who hops in and watches and checks us out, and I know the guys are super appreciative of it, and so thank you. For those of you in chat, let us know, did you try one of the new places? Did you go to Taco Buddha? Did you go to the new Detroit style pizza place? Like, I didn't, because I was like, hey, I'm gonna go to Blue Jay and grab food there, and my wife, I don't think she had anything, but because I think she was just like, no, I'm good, and whatever. But yeah, I heard, the only kind of negative I heard was that people couldn't find where the new coffee options were.
Yeah,
because there isn't a standalone. It's like it's going to be part of some of the other places or the bars or whatever. So I think that was part of the issue, is that that wasn't very clear. But I mean, it's first game. It's first game of the season. There's always going to be some sort of issue. Whether it's figuring out where things are or not enough of something or whatever. So yeah, but I think overall, from what I heard, it was pretty positive. Jeremy?
Yeah. So what I could say is, so at City Live, they did have Motortown Pizza. That's the new pizza place. They had the Detroit style pizza at that event, and they had Biscuit Town's dessert options. So we got to try those. Those were very good at the City Live event. On Media Day, Motortown also has in the stadium a New York style slice, and that was also very, very good. If I'm going to pick one or the other over those two, I'm picking the Detroit, and that's what we had on game day. What my friend Carly had brought. She bought it comes in a boat, but it's cut into 4 pieces. So we just all split a piece of pizza after going to Blue Jay. So that was pretty good. That was, I think, the only food item I had. I do want to go to Biscuit Town and try their biscuit sandwich. That's probably the one I'm most excited for, the Peter Wood special. He's the one that really made the case for it to come to get that sandwich. And I saw, what was it? I saw Beast Barbecue, I think, changed their menu. And from what I saw, I think they dropped the pork steak sandwich.
Really?
Oh God, that's a national tragedy there. I mean, that's now I it's 10 minutes from my house, so
Right.
if I want to go there, I can go there anytime I want to. But again, there is no park in the league that does food as good as what we have here, so we we should appreciate it, even if it's an option or something that that I know they've done a lot of I think this year they're trying to do some gluten-free things and like accommodate more people, and that's great, and I've been fortunate enough to have gone to some of the stadiums around the league, not too many yet, but we're going to be doing 2 more this year, and at least 2 more, and then obviously we'll get to see when the divisional alignments come in, people will hopefully be able to make those road trips and those drives to see how kind of these other places do things, and nobody has food like we do, so even if there should be something for everybody, hopefully. And now the only concern sometimes is that yes, it's expensive. It is, and hopefully they address some of that and provide some more reasonable options for people. I know Nashville had a big thing this year where they're doing some like $4 or $5 stuff, and it was lines out the door at some of these places. So yeah, I mean, it can be a trade-off of convenience versus price versus availability, but yeah, overall, I think that the food's as good as it ever was, and as long as they have the world's most overqualified pizza delivery man as their chief flavor officer, I think they're in good shape. So,
Erik, I do have to ask. You said dessert. Where did you go for dessert?
That was the dessert, the Biscuit Town. I got there.
Biscuit, that's right.
I got the banana one.
Okay.
It's like a croissant style biscuit, and then it had whipped cream, chopped bananas, and then like a caramel sauce with some nuts on top of it, and that type. So it was solid. Yeah. And it is cool seeing how much they have adjusted. I don't know if you guys were available or at the game. I always relate back to the first game at City Park ever, where all the systems went down and it was just a madhouse on people trying to get food and all that type of stuff. So I know there's still occasionally here and there, but it has come a long way. The mobile order app is really convenient. So if you are trying to avoid those lines and stuff, I always suggest using that because it really does cut down on a lot of the time, but just so many great options. Like Chris said, they do it better than anybody in the league.
Yeah, I've got to head back to Bold Spoon. I loved the ice cream last year, especially during the hot games, which, but trying to get there at halftime to get ice cream before play resumed was always a fun time. It's a race against the clock. But no, I'm excited about that. Fet Lord Colton in the chat. And I don't know, Chris, you mentioned away games. What's one away match that you want to go to this season?
Well, obviously we'll be over at Kansas. I know that's a pain for some people this year because it's a midweek. It's just kind of the way it is. It's unfortunate, but the big one for us this year is we're going to be doing the double, which is Vancouver and Portland, Saturday, Wednesday. I have been begging for 4 seasons to have some sort of Pacific Northwest double, whether it's Portland, Seattle, or Seattle, Vancouver. So we finally get that. It's the least convenient because it's the 2 that are most farthest apart. But the one thing that we do know this year, which is a good thing, is that City will be staying up there. They're not flying back and then turning around and flying back to the Pacific Northwest, which I never understood that. It kills your legs flying. And in fact, was it 2-3 years ago? And I talked to Baker about this at the live flyover this past week. There was, I think, a Minnesota, or I don't remember if it was Minnesota or Kansas. We flew the day of the game. And I was like, you never do that. You never fly on game day, right? It just kills your legs. And especially if you're flying all the way out to the Pacific Northwest. So excited to go to Vancouver, which might be the last opportunity. You never know with their ownership situation and their stadium situation. This could be it for Vancouver and the MLS. I hope not. It's my favorite city, and I love going there anyways. But and then Portland. This is the 100th anniversary of Providence Park, which is their stadium, one of the most historic stadiums in the league. So I'm super excited to see Providence Park, see the dumb guy with the chainsaw and all that. So I'm excited to see that. And some friends of ours, and actually one of the La Cascarita podcast guys, Paco, lived in Portland for a while. And so I'm excited he's going to be there, and, Santos member, and going to show us around a little bit, I think. So yeah, we're excited to get to Portland this year. So KC for sure. And then those two will be our trips. And then, I don't know if you guys had planned on going anywhere, but, if you aren't, if you could go somewhere this year, would it be New York? Would it be, where would it be?
Erik, the floor is yours.
Oh man. I mean, obviously, I that's one thing that I am bummed that I haven't been able to partake in so far as an away day. Obviously, yeah, Casey's the obvious one. It really is a bummer that, we kind of got the midweek for both Derby games this year, especially for me. My job, my full time, I do overnight shifts and I work at Wednesdays and Sundays. So it's like, all right, yeah, like it's either I work all day and then try and make that, Thursday, and that type of stuff. So it's just a bummer on that. It's obviously too early, but I think if I were to make one outside of like the KC Derby, and you can even throw Chicago in there as, potentially future Derby and that type of stuff hyped up, even though they tried that terrible Twitter video to hype it as a Derby and that type of stuff. But to me, a place that always just looks real fun, intimidating, and I almost kind of like that when it comes to it just reminds me of is LAFC. My mom's side of the family is all out in California, and they're not too drastically far away from the stadium, but it just, I don't know. Clearly, I bought the city, shirt that they came out with the black and gold. I think the way it almost looks darker in there and just gives that intimidating factor. And then I think they call them the 5282 or something like that. Their supporter section, 3252. Yeah, because I remember we made a dumb comment one year where we were like, "There's no way there's 3252 people in there," and they're like, "It's what they call us," like that, and it was like because they were empty that day, but. It just looks like it would be a cool spot to be. Obviously, it's an exciting team to watch as well. So to me, if I could make one, I think LAFC might be up there for me.
So I'm going to throw out two. One of them is just for the environment. I think Austin looks like it'd be just a lot of fun with the Verde, the green out, just their whole environment looks like it'd be good. The other one I've already been.
Jeremy, hang on. You picked that because you want to go eat barbecue and tacos. I mean,
don't. Hey, why am I being attacked? Yes, both. Why can't both be true?
That's a good point. Both things can be true.
Yeah. Both can be true. Aaron Franklin's barbecue down there in Texas. I'll go anytime.
And Descada Tacos, which is, from what I understand, the number one taco truck in the country. So yeah, I mean it's they have it very, very good in Austin. So yeah, I don't blame you for putting that on the list.
No, the other one is I've already been there, so it's second. But I want to go back because I've got friends there now in LA Galaxy. I want to go back out to I don't even know what it's called now, but I would like to hang out with Edgar and the guys from News Across the Galaxy. So that'd be my second choice. Real quick, and this is not related to soccer at all, but I'm going to give you another cheap plug for South End supporters, Erik, because I've got to know, it's been a question that I've had for you for a while. The giraffe that's in the background behind you, I have wondered this since you guys started your YouTube channel. What is the story behind the giraffe?
Yes. Yeah, so we do a segment at the end of our show, or just on our show, where people can, send in questions. We call them South End submissions, and once we dabbled into Reddit, we got a lot of people that I don't know if they were actually like part of like the city fan base or they just happened to stumble across our question and just threw in. And there was one particular person that he would comment. He used to do it weekly, and then he got a break for a while. But it was always he would send in these like real like. I mean, I joke they would always ruin my night because the show would end and I would still be thinking about his questions going upstairs. Like one was like, and I'll throw a couple your way, and if you guys want to join in on answering these because they were interesting. Like one was, how much sawdust do you think you could hide in a batch of Rice Krispie treats before anybody started to notice at a party? Like he would ask those types of questions. Or he asked one where it was like cake, snake, and a rake. You got to eat all three. What order are you eating them? Like it was just like stuff where you'd go upstairs and you'd be like, who is like thinking of this type of stuff. Well, one of his questions was, if you had a giraffe that you had to hide from the government, what would you do and hide it? And we were coming up with answers. And then one of the stupid question or answers we had is we would just dress him up in a bow tie and just play him off as he's our buddy Jerry. And so that's Jerry, and that's where that came from. And then my mom for Christmas, who's one of our biggest fans of the show, found like a Google image of a giraffe. Oh, that was the other question. And then that built off of, if we put him in a bow tie, does the bow tie go up by the head? Does it go down by the base of the neck? Where do you put the bow tie or the tie on a giraffe? So it just sparkled from there. And then he kind of became our weird mascot of the show. But yeah, it was, if you had a giraffe that you had to hide from the government, how would you do it? And for somehow we settled on, we would just dress him up in a bow tie and claim he's our business associate. So it is one of my favorite things is when people do look, it's like, oh, he's got pictures of players that are signed, scarf. Is that a giraffe in a bow tie? Like, what is it? Yeah, it is something that stands out there. So yeah, that's the story behind Jerry.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I was always
Kayla. So Kayla has a question for you, Erik. Would you ever consider abandoning the South End and coming and partying with us in the North End for a game or two? So my question to you is, have you sat anywhere other than your South End seats? Have you watched the game in the North End yet? And if not, would you?
Oh, of course. I've frequented the North End a couple times. Actually, my first time, and really what actually kicked off our show was my first time that I ventured to the North End was the Tornado game, and against Cincinnati. Nice. And the reason being is like we were down there with just all that type. And I've always, when we first got our season tickets, I got them with my wife, my father-in-law, my brother-in-law, who I do the show with, David, and then my sister-in-law. David and my father-in-law, David knew soccer more through gambling and then like the World Cup. My father-in-law, this was really his first exposure as far as so when we were like trying to decipher on seats and that type of stuff, I was more under the impact of like, I would love to be in the North End with the supporters chanting, obviously coming from an English Premier League background, like that is where I felt I belonged. But I didn't know if that's where they would belong. And especially like, my father-in-law, I was like, I don't know if he'd want people yelling around him all the time and that type of stuff. So that's when we, settled in, and what was available at the time when we went was the South End. But yeah, I went there then because, back then anyway, after that experience, they weren't checking like your ticket. So I just kind of walked into the North End and spent the rest of the, game in the North End. But I've sat there a couple times, and it's funny, the North End gets a lot of love as far as the media, and well-deserved because, that's kind of as far as pictures and that type of stuff. And I was always just like, man, we never get pictures of us on the South End. Like, and then the last time I was actually in there, Kyle from No Goal Patrol was nice enough to allow me to sit down there, and I was up towards one of the front rows, and finally I get my picture taken, and that's what my profile picture is on my Instagram. So it's like the only time I ever get featured from City is when I'm in the North End. And so I enjoy it down there. Especially like last year, when trying to sell tickets was a lot more tough because I've been to every game, but last year anyway, I had 2 extra on my account, and it was just tough. It was tough giving them away, let alone selling them. But a lot of times, if I could sell them, and I knew I was going by myself anyway, I would just go, pick up a supporter section ticket and go hang out there. So yes, I do love the North End. It's a lot of fun, and they bring the atmosphere and stuff like that. I have learned that you got to find what people maybe know the chants and how much they have been drinking, because if somebody doesn't know the chants and they've been drinking heavily, the yelling from behind the ear can get a little bit little intense. So you pick your spots and you pick your people. But honestly, I've definitely got to make it down there now that you're a capo. I got to be down there yelling at Jay Clem, being like, getting into it with you, man.
Listen, you know what? I never thought a picture of me that was taken harmlessly would end up becoming somewhat of a meme on Discord, but that has happened now. So it's fine. And I'm sure there will be many more, because unfortunately my girlfriend likes to take a lot of pictures of me doing things that I find fun. So can't control it. It'll happen, and I'll just live with it. But it'll be a fun time nonetheless in the North End. And I'm glad that you guys that you ventured over there a few times. Where are the other South Enders at? Are they also South Enders, or are they spread throughout the stadium?
Yeah, so Dave, who was on this week's episode with me and who joined the show a little. He's up in 204, which is technically still on the south end, and I've ventured up there with him for a game. And it's a good. That's another great thing about the stadium is it's kind of like being an Enterprise. You don't have a bad seat in the house. Like if you want to really see the game in its fullest, you go up to the top and you can see everything develop really well. And then we're a little bit low. We're in the lower bowl and definitely closer to the field. So if you want to get that like real appreciation for the speed of the game and just seeing how quick these guys move and touches and stuff like that, it's cool being lower. So there's no bad spot in there. But yeah, Dave's up there. And then David's agreement, he was, in the same row with us. His agreement ran up, so he's going to kind of be picking and choosing. He's actually been in the South End as well. We took him and my nephew there, and my nephew loved it. He even got to kind of wave a little flag for a little bit, so that was like a highlight. And I love how much like the North End incorporates like kids and that type of stuff to make them feel just as much of the atmosphere as well. So yeah, no bad spot. I haven't been to any of the like exclusive spots, I guess. Like I haven't been to the Ultra Club other than post game, and I haven't been to like the Monetas and all that type of stuff. We do have a buddy who sits over there, and it's kind of like he gets them with work, so it's like he gets random ones every once in a while. But other than that, I'd like to also do that maybe this year, is just venture around and check out new spots.
So I would tell you, we did the Ultra Club for the last U.S. Men's team game here.
Yeah.
And there is no better view of the game than Ultra Club, because you get the down the field overview. You see everything develop. It's awesome. The downside to it, to me anyways, is you're so far removed from the noise of the North End, and so like that's the thing. I feel so disconnected when I sit, cause I'm down there. And so, the way that my wife and I have shared our season tickets and given them to some friends of ours, and then gone to other spots in the stadium for the first 3 years. We sat in a majority of the bottom bowl at one point or the other. I mean, we've sat in almost every, I don't want to say every section, but it's pretty close to it. And then we've had Ultra Club tickets, for some of the like U.S. men's games and stuff. So yeah, the view is awesome, but you just feel a little disconnected from the noise. And so we love where we're at. We're in the northeast corner downstairs, right next to the sports section. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to be kind of closer to where that kind of atmosphere is. And that was something that, I was down on the southeast corner, not too far from you guys for the first couple of years in 101. And yeah, we feared it initially, like, oh, we don't want to be too close to the drums and all that stuff. And my wife, but then after like half a season, she's like, I wish we were down there. It's more fun down there. And so that's why we moved. Yeah. So
yeah, you're right on that. Like as far as the chants and stuff go, you kind of have that moment of like, all right, which one is it? You're kind of having to like listen, like which one is, and then the time delay is tough too, especially when they're doing the Viking clap. We're trying to watch hands go and try and time it down. So like all that you do feel a little bit of that disconnect. And to your point too, like I was surprised in the times I am there. You're like, oh, it's going to be super loud and overwhelming, and you're like, oh no, like if anything, it's nice as well because the seats within the stadium are pretty compact. And so I always tell people, if you want a lot of room and you want to spread out, the North End and that little standing bar is real nice, and like I feel more comfortable in the North End anyway. The thing I will say that from what I've talked to other people as well, that is nice about just seats, and you kind of have it almost the best of both worlds being in the North End and seats, is we can meander around the pregame and not have to worry about I got to get my spot or I got to do this type of stuff. It is nice knowing like, oh, I can just walk down at any moment and these are my seats and not have to worry about I got to get that spot and then somebody has to be here to stay there, and that type of stuff. So
there is a bit of a strategy to it, because you also have to think about, okay, do I want to be in front of or behind the drums and the musicians because it's really loud in front of them and it's not as bad behind them. You also have the flags as a consideration. Do I want to be looking through the flags the whole time, or do I want to be coming over the sides? Like the North End is, and so it is a little bit of a, like, I could never see myself going there by myself you're more of like, okay, it's me and the group of people I go with, to sit in the north end, because then I know like, oh, okay, if one guy goes to grab a beer, the other 6 are going to be like, yeah, this is our spot. Like, this is our area, like we've kind of, figured out where we're going to be. So, so yeah, I mean, I hope that people aren't intimidated and are fearful of going in there, not because of, being scared, just more of just like, it's not as overwhelming as you would think it is. Like it's a really good time.
Yeah.
So I was at first. So up until the Champions Cup last year with Houston, I had never been in the North End. I was intimidated by it. I didn't know all of the chants. I'm like, I'm generally not a people-y person, so I normally don't want people all up in my business. But now there is absolutely nowhere I would rather be, whether it's by myself, whether it's not. The North End is where I'm at, although I will say I think it's 120 is where we're at no goal patrol. I love that because right now that at least that subsection doesn't have a whole lot of big flags waving in front of us outside of when we score a goal. So my view doesn't get obstructed as much because I don't think I could do. I think it's 118 or 19 is in the middle there. That there's just too much going on for me there. So, but. And I know we're going to round out, but I think talking about the supporter group, the North End, all of those things, there are 2 things. First thing, and I meant to mention this during the pod, and I forgot to mention it, but I do want to give some kudos to the folks that organized a card stunt in the 8th minute of the game on Saturday that said supporters. I don't remember what it said. I think it says
supporters stand up.
Well, yeah, supporters. Yeah. So that's
another nice thing about the South End is the Tifus and all that. We get a good vantage point of that, and where you may miss a little bit of that.
And I saw the colors. Go ahead.
Yeah, and to kind of piggyback on that, and then Eric, you bring up a good point, or you just spark something. For those of you who are unaware, there was supposed to be a Tifo. It was painted, it was ready, and then on prep day it ripped. And because the wind caught it apparently. And so for those of you who were going to the home opener thinking, oh yeah, there's always a Tifo for a home opener, there was. But rest in peace, Tifo, because it didn't survive the kind of, they always have a night, basically the night before they bring it in, and they unfurl it, make sure everything's good, and and it ripped, and they couldn't use it. So it's a very, very unfortunate because the amount of work, and I actually got to paint one last year, so I could experience it for myself. The amount of work that goes into it, not only planning it, designing it, hauling it, painting it, all that stuff, and to then have that happen, I felt so bad for those guys. So it's unfortunate, but the card stunt was very nice. Yes.
I just thought it was nice considering we had Zach on last week. I guess the Tifo, though, I heard there was talk at the game that they were going to try to save it for the next home game. Is that, do we officially know? It's a no-go?
Kyle from No Go Patrol would be the person to ask, not me.
Okay.
So,
okay.
I don't know. The only thing I heard was that it was not going to be available for the home opener.
Yeah. And so I know there's a question in the chat from Fat Lord Colton. We'll get to that. But my question for you guys first, since you talked about chants, do you have a favorite chant that you've heard at Energizer Park?
I'm kind of a purist. I'm a sucker for just this. We're St. Louis City. Who are you? We start every game with it, and we start the second half with it. I like it so much that my preview article that I write for STL Soccer News is called "We're St. Louis City. Who are you?" And so clearly I have a favorite, and it's that one. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I see occasionally when people say, "Oh, some of the chants aren't their favorite," or "I don't like this one or that one." They're a lot of work to create, and you can talk to the people who come up with them, and you can talk to Floor, Floor to Noise guys. They're a lot, and they're always looking for suggestions. They're always looking for input. And so if you have ideas, throw it out there. I mean, one of the hosts of this podcast owes his entire podcasting career and YouTube career to the fact that he came up with the zombie chant for Berkey, and so like you never know, I don't know what rhymes with Mbake, but I'm sure something does, so go for it, right? Try to come up with
don't go chasing waterfalls or something.
Yeah,
we'll do something with that, right?
Again, like Um, that's my favorite is we're St. Louis City. Who are you? But Erik, what do you got?
Yeah, one thing I will say also about being in the North End is it was also nice hearing like some of the like getting actually knowing what exactly I know you can look them up on the app, but it just hits a little different when you're hearing them live. And there were some where we were always kind of like, I don't really know what they're saying. I know there's one about F and shoot that's always fun to sit here like down there. I like what I want to give like the English chants, how they can find like real like stuff that happened the day before and then turn it into a chant towards a player. There's part of me that wishes like America would adopt the, and just understand that it's just, but I'm kind of like with Chris, just give me the classic, we're saying, because it is something where somebody who's just brand new to coming in the stadium can figure it out quick and then join right in. And also there's just something about, being traditionalist of knowing like, yeah, it's game time. This is our chant. And this is what, like, before every game, I'll try and get a picture right at kickoff. And especially now that they're doing a lot of the color smoke and stuff before, I give a big let's go yell, and then I join right in. And it's just kind of like that feeling of like, yep, we're off and we're going. So, and it's just it's also nice knowing too, like, because they are difficult, and I'm not, but some of them do piggyback off of others throughout the league, and you're like, oh, that sounds familiar. So it is nice knowing like that's us, that's our chant. This is who are we?
Yeah, no. Yep. So briefly, mine. St. Louis is wonderful. I love that one. We're the home of the toasted ravioli. I don't know why I love that one, but there's a new one that's going to be my favorite now. If it can take off, it's the We Are the City. If we can get that to hit, that is going to be an absolute vibe in the North End. It's going to be difficult. We've got to get the people to know the words. We had Zach on who promoted last week, and check out the Florida Noise socials for it. But it's going to be a vibe if we can get that to hit. It's going to hit hard, and it'll be unique because it's going to sound like nothing else any other supporter group in MLS has, because it's a song that was written by a St. Louis band for St. Louis City. So, or about St. Louis City. So,
very cool.
Yeah. And as far as tifos go, just briefly, my favorite one was This Is Our Home. I think it was from the home finale of our first season. That one where was the big black tifo where they had the Energizer Park, the stadiums, and the players and Kendall on it. I loved that one.
Erik?
I don't know about you guys, but
man, we've like Chris said, shout out to everybody who's ever been a part of a tifo, because there is so much work that goes into it, and they really are amazing. I think the one that stands out to me that's always kind of came back to me is the Wicked the Witch of the West when we played Kansas, for a couple reasons. Because right before we were joking, like, it's tough. You try and come up as a show like something creative, and like David actually said something, but about Wizard of Oz. But one of my favorite parts of that is David, that day, it was just me and him who went to the game, went to the North End to, I think, get tacos or something like that. And then this all goes up, and he comes back to it. He's like, what happened? He's like, I think I heard something about flying monkeys, and what was it? Like, he couldn't see it because he was on the North End. So we City took a face-on picture. And then if you zoom in real close in the like concourse area where you walk out, it's lit up because it's a night game. And all you see is David poking his head out the corner, wondering what's going on. So for many reasons, not only just the style, but I can zoom in on the picture and be like, there's David just poking out, like the only person on the concourse that day. And it makes me laugh every time. So I think that one's my favorite.
Yeah. So I'll give you, I don't want to just say yes and be done. So that the You're Not in Kansas Anymore is my favorite. I think that's the best one / most creative one they've ever had. I would also give a shout to the one that they did. I think it was 2 years ago at the end of the season. It was the Santos one where anybody could come down and sign it. That was really cool.
Oh, yeah.
And that was something where it was like, hey, you can come on down. They had painted it. Basically, you could sign it. Then they kind of cut it. You could buy your section of it. Like, with the exception of the very first home opener one, which is, I got a piece of it right above my shoulder right there.
Yeah.
That one, with the exception of that one and the Kansas one, I really like the fact that Santos did that, where you could come sign it and kind of say, hey, this was my contribution, even if you didn't paint it.
Yeah.
this is me making a mark that I'm a City fan. That was really, really cool to me.
I never knew that story. Was that the Wall of Sound one, I think,
That
maybe?
was. Yeah, it was a Wall
Yeah,
of Sound.
I remember the Wall of Sound. I didn't know that story, though. That's real. That is even
Yeah,
cooler.
they let anybody come down to the gym that they had like a couple days where you could just come down and sign it. They were basically grabbing cell phones at the door so you can take a picture of it and share it. But that one was cool, and any that kind of encourage that kind of community and interactivity with the fans is always really cool. So so those are kind of the three that I have kind of are partial to. So
yeah. Well, again, we're part of a great community here, not only in soccer in St. Louis, but among content creators. And I know that we plugged your stuff a few times tonight, Erik. But as we're wrapping up here, again, thank you for hanging out. Thanks for staying over for the final third. Again, tell the people who you are, where they can find you.
No, again, as I said earlier, thank you for having me. This has been a lot of fun, and you guys do amazing work here. So obviously, it's really cool to be a part of. But yeah, we have a podcast as well called South End Supporters. We try to get one out once a week now. Just dads and everything like that. We're going to try our best to still stay consistent with it. Typically, they'll usually come out on Mondays. Any platform you can find it, but to kind of keep up with when we put them out, South End Supporters on Instagram. _podcast SCL, Twitter and Reddit, our Facebook page, YouTube. I mean, you can kind of find us anywhere. But yeah, thanks guys for having me because it's a lot of fun.
And Chris, again, another plug for you. Where can we find your work and the great video clips and stuff that you're adding into the content creator verse?
Yeah, just at STL Soccer News on socials, and then stlsoccernews.com is the website. Again, thank you so much. We have 125 of you still hanging out with us tonight, which is really, really cool to see. The little bit of a later start time tonight, and we appreciate you sticking with us, and very appreciative to Erik to coming on and Jeremy for driving tonight and taking the reins. So should be back to normal programming next week with Tom and Jake. And you won't have to look at my face anymore, which is always going to be good. So, just appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight and talking soccer, and looking forward to hopefully a good game on Saturday. So,
yep. Well, Sunday. I think it's Sunday night soccer this week.
Oh, it is
on Sunday.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's all right. Yeah. So either way, we'll be back to talk about it next week, and then hopefully on March 7th, we'll get to catch you guys all at the park. But until then, thanks for hanging out with us, and have a good rest of your week.
Go City.